IVM.
This is Audiogyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. Welcome to grand finale of this series, Where Are the Designers? It was a 12-part series featuring few of the top influential design leaders in India, talking about the process of hiring, challenges in finding and retaining talent, and some tips for young designers. I'm so happy and proud to announce my co-host for this series, Abhinit Tiwari. He works at Gojek. Hey Abhinit, what's
Hey
up?
Kedar, happy to be back again. Can't believe this is the last episode in the series, man.
Yeah. And today we have a special guest. I'm so honored to have Hrush Bhatt with us, actually back with us on Audiogyan. He came in episode number 47 back in December 2017. Obviously, he needs no introduction in the world of entrepreneurs and designers. One of the most designers in the Indian ecosystem, who's been responsible for shaping the Indian digital space with a simple design through Cleartrip. He's currently working on a SaaS-based product for the US market. He's a very old friend and a mentor. So thanks, Hrush, for giving me your time. And it's a real honor and pleasure to have you on Audiogyan.
Thanks, Kedar, for that glowing intro. And so happy to be back chatting with you guys.
Great. Cool. So, Hrush, we have a rapid fire round, which is kind of a surprise round for all the guests who are part of this series. So consider it to be like a warm-up round, just quick on the fly questions. Nothing, few of them might be related to circle back, but something just for fun. So are you ready for that?
Sure.
Awesome. So I'll start with, there are 10 of them. So I'll start with the first one, your favorite quote, any particular quote that you really like. And the reason why I'm saying just a quote and not a design quote, because I keep following your Twitter. So it's interesting to know.
No, one particular quote comes to mind. Sorry, Kedar.
Okay. Your favorite designer?
I think Dieter Rams.
Awesome. Okay, this is a fill in the blank. Before everything else, a designer should be able to dash.
Understand problems.
Okay. A book you would recommend for designers to read? Like,
Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug.
okay. Any recent app you liked very much?
There's a game called Threes that it's just a really simple game, but it's so beautifully designed and maddeningly addictive to the point where I had to delete it from my phone.
Wow. Okay, nice. Handwritten notes versus like Apple Notes.
Handwritten notes.
Okay. Apple TV or Netflix?
Apple TV, no contest.
I was expecting that.
I mean, I want to qualify. Are you talking about Apple TV Plus or are you talking about the box?
Both.
It's a box, then Netflix is in the box. So it's kind of no contest.
Yeah.
But actually, to be perfectly honest, I'm more of a Disney Hotstar guy these days.
Oh, nice. Okay. I think I left Disney after, as in like Hotstar after watching Chernobyl. I just like not inclined to it, but great. Yeah. Fill in the blanks, which is, I don't know how we'll receive this, but yeah, if Mumbai is Martin Luther King, Bangalore is Dash.
Batman.
Great. One thing you love about Twitter and one thing you hate about Twitter.
I love being able to discover new things, and I hate the pointless debates.
Oh. And the last one is your favorite person from history.
Tough one. I think maybe Einstein, just because the world still doesn't work the way he says physics works, but no one can prove him wrong.
Interesting. Cool. That was the rapid fire round. Thanks for doing this. And yeah, we'll come to the main topic of our today's discussion. Although, like in the past, for the other guests, we have slightly deep dived into what's their process of hiring and like how do referrals work and so on and so forth, which was more on the job kind of insights to share from them. But with you, I think I'll start with like one important point and then it's more meta sort of understanding of your thoughts. So like we have worked together and I've seen that you appreciate where designers know how to code as well. And in one of your tweets, you have mentioned designers should know how to code, how to design, and how to communicate as well. I don't know about the order of things, but can you like wanted to start with that what is your take of who's a designer and why do you think they should code, design, and also communicate, especially the communicate part. So we can start there and like explore more questions as we go along.
Sure. So if I remember right, I don't know if I had another tweet, but I remember tweeting something about a full stack designer and saying something along the lines of, I think there was 5 or 6 layers in that stack and writing copy. Maybe that's what you're alluding to as communication was part of it. But coming back to the bigger point, I think that design is clearly far more than pushing pixels around the screen until they look or feel pleasing, right? I think design is really digging deep into problems so that we can create great solutions. And very rarely in any other field other than user interface design do you find that there's someone who makes things but doesn't know how to work with the raw material that is used to make the thing, right? A sculptor knows how to work with alabaster or marble or bronze or iron or whatever. I don't think he could do what he does unless he understood the raw materials with which what he wants to make is being made. And I think knowing how to code is a very underestimated superpower for designers because it lets them bring their own vision to life so much faster than having to depend on others. It also gets rid of any lost in translation issues. It makes them a better, more appreciated member of any team that is building software products. Because no longer are they the guys that just send across, let's for the sake of simplicity call it a JPEG, but they're actually in there with their engineering counterparts, building at the raw material level. So for all of those reasons, and probably a few more, I think knowing how to code is essential in a designer's toolbox. That said, it is getting harder and harder in some areas for designers to actually know, because especially in the field of native apps for smartphones, I think grasping at that level of programming is significantly more complex than what the designer used to need to know, which was HTML and CSS, of course, inside out, and a little bit of JavaScript was helpful. But now we're talking full-fledged programming languages like Java or Swift or Objective-C. And that I can understand is probably a little bit out of the depth for most designers.
And copy?
Well, copy is, it's part of the design, isn't it? So people that don't know how to do, like, I don't call them designers. People who don't know how to write, they don't know how to program. I get quite frustrated with the fragmentation we are seeing today in the field of software design. Someone is a UX guy, someone is an IA guy, someone is a like copy guy, someone is a lipstick guy. Come on. Sure. I just, it's highly inefficient, right? Let's say as an entrepreneur, it's highly inefficient for me to hire designers that need 5 other guys to do one thing. As a designer, it's like, what exactly do you do if you don't know how to write what it says on the box? And we aren't talking about writing copy along the lines of what like a David Ogilvy writes for an ad campaign, right? We're talking about copy that goes in a label on a form, on a button, or an error message. So we're not asking for literary masterpieces here. It's just basic stuff that gets your design to the point where it's the most usable by the people you're designing for.
Makes sense. An interface is 90% text, right? Anyways, like that's the primary medium of transferring the information, right? Like if you don't get clarity there, it's very difficult to do anything else, right? Probably the biggest lever that a designer has.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, just one more question on that. When you said communication also, does it encompass things like you should be able to present your design? Like CEO should demo wo lines ka, like just different degree of communication. Because then if you can't communicate or if you can't defend your design decisions, it also lands up in like you just go back with like the old style ki, like art director ne paper faad diya and then you have to go back and like redraw something. So does that also become a part of being a designer?
Ideally, yes, but I think particularly in the India context, where I don't think communication by and large is strength in any discipline, right? It's really hard to find people that can communicate supremely well, whether it's through the written medium or the spoken medium. So by saying they should know how to communicate, what my purpose of saying that as essential for designers is that they should know how to communicate from within the product that they're designing. I do feel that it's ideal if they can also communicate in the real world through writing and speech and whatever other mediums. But I feel it's difficult for a lot of people, and they shouldn't be disadvantaged for it.
There's something interesting you said, Hrush, that you're now leaning towards design is much more than pushing pixels. I think all of us here would agree with that. But I can't help but notice, I've been following the work you, Suneet, and the team has done for many years. I can't help but notice that you folks did end up putting out a product where the form was also amazing. The form was also simple, right? The aesthetics were also great, right? And I've heard Kedar talking about your love for the lack of a better word, good taste, right? So could you talk a little bit about uh, what's the importance of form, right? And I do understand you mentioned Dieter Rams, and he also said something like only well executed things can be beautiful, right? So I want to dig a little deeper into if you could talk about when do you prioritize for form? Yeah.
Sure, I'll tell you exactly when we prioritize for form. And if you look at the history of Cleartrip as the design history of Cleartrip, I think the first versions of it never particularly looked pretty. I mean, they didn't look ugly, but no one was going to put it in a frame and hang it on a wall, right? So the way I think about this, guys, is I put form third in a list of three things. And if I remember right, I got into an argument, one of these stupid pointless arguments with Harish at Cred long before there was Cred, where I said I'd rather take something that works flawlessly but looks like shit than looks flawless but works like shit. So to me, form is third. I think number one is to make it work. Number two is to make it work fast. And number three is to make it look good.
But sorry if I'm being too annoying here, but for most entrepreneurs, especially in a company at Series A or early in your lifespan, when you nail the first two, the third kind of gets left out, right? So
that's up to the entrepreneur's sense of taste, right?
Sure.
If they don't care, yes, it will get left out. But if they do care, then I think look, most entrepreneurs love what they do, right? And when you love something, you want it to be as good as it possibly can be. So if they don't think it's important, then yeah, sure, it will get left out.
Sure. From a business point of view, do you think, like, have you ever been able to put, directly measure, see in your numbers, the impact that, just say, form itself would have had? Like maybe some customers who were sticky to your businesses or products simply because of that?
No.
Fair enough.
I mean, I think even today, like 2 days ago, I was in a conversation with someone who's a growth marketer, and he pulled out his phone and said, "See, I still have Cleartrip. I only use Cleartrip." And I think for a lot of those people, I don't think the form is pleasing, but I don't think that's why it's their travel product of choice. I think it's their travel product of choice because it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
It could look significantly different. As long as it worked the same, I think people would still love it as much. So,
Sure.
Good question, Abhinit. But in my experience, I don't think I can say that, no, I'm going to tie the way this looks to those extra points of conversion or X or Y metric.
And great answer, Hrush, because I think a lot of people get lost in that. Like they start trying to quantify, measure what the impact of form and form alone is. And what you said makes a lot of sense. Do it because you care for your product. Do it because it shows the love that and affection that you have for what you're designing. Don't do probably not worth trying to measure this thing at all. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think that a lot of designers, especially, and I'm sure all of us, even the three of us in this conversation, have fallen for this when we were younger, is if you show up to work one day and decide that, hey, I'm going to redesign this big thing or this little thing, half the time you're doing it for some personally motivated reason, whatever. Maybe that design annoys you. Maybe like it's been like something you've been embarrassed about for the last like 3 months. Who knows? Whatever, right?
Yep.
But if your boss or your product counterpart were to come and ask you, what metric are you designing for? And you wouldn't have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think form is one of those things, right? Like,
sure.
We'll circle back to that, but the thing which about taste, which Abhinit, I think I'll cover up. I'll have like a follow-up question on the taste part.
Yeah.
So Hrush, like I've spoken to multiple people in the Audiogyan journey itself, and I've seen like, in fact, like just few weeks ago, I was talking to Sunit about it. Like people who are using like a well-designed email client will also want like a well-designed kitchen trolley or like a well-designed wardrobe, well-designed sofa. So the taste of touching something, feeling the surface of like a well-designed product, obviously functions also, all that put together sort of builds your taste is my understanding. Is there any way to acquire or retain those, like retain that taste? Or acquire rather. Acquire is important, retain to ho jata, because once you get used to it, you're used to it.
I think
just listening this. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Again, I think I'm going to stick to the definition of well-designed that we in this conversation have sort of hinted at, which is something that is well-designed is something that works flawlessly, right? And I think if that's what you're after, then your taste is actually acquired simply by the dopamine in your brain going off when something works flawlessly for you, right? And then you want something else to also work flawlessly for you, and the other thing, and the other thing. So I think acquiring that is simpler than it seems. It's just having a fairly high bar for what level of flaws you're willing to accept in your experience of using the things you use. I don't think it's as complicated as a lot of people make it out to be. Yeah. I think if you search for something and put a very high bar on what you're willing to accept, taste acquisition is 80% done.
No, the reason why I was asking is because like works fast or works effortlessly, or it just works. That is a function of designer plus the engineer. A lot of times, what I've been interacting with young designers, the concept of working in tandem as a pod with the front end engineer is missing in bits and pieces. Wherever, as per my experience at least. I mean, at Gojek, because Abhinit comes from a very heavy. In fact, he's a coder first and then a designer.
I get into trouble a lot because of that, Kedar. It suddenly become unfashionable, actually.
Yeah.
We can talk more about that.
Correct. So the question was more directed towards the form of it. I mean, simple taste, yeah, like how do you pick colors and how do you like select the right fonts and how do you like, I mean, there are these new trends of skeuomorphism and like new things, but you know what I mean, right? It's just like basic rakho, like simple enough to so that it works, but it also looks beautiful too. And I believe it's not a very methodical way. It's just like what kind of content you're consuming, what kind of literature you are reading, what kind of music you are exposed to. All that put together, I've seen like your taste to be refined. So I was just asking you, ki, how does it happen, or are there conscious efforts to be put in?
Good question. I think a lot of it is learning, digging deeper, diving into the brands or people or products that you might admire yourself, that you might love yourself, and surrounding yourself with a lot of that stuff. And you might love, let's say, Bang and Olufsen headphones, right?
Mhm.
And then if you go say, I want to go see how they do their brochures, right? In a lot of these places where there is a centralized creative direction, you find that designer or that team's taste flows across various aspects of the company and the brand, and not just in the hardware design of the headphone, right? So it often just comes from that, right? How often do you find that a product you love is comes in a box that looks like shit? It doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
It almost always happens that the packaging is also great. And the packaging isn't great because the product is great, right? The product didn't make the packaging great. The same people that cared enough about the product to make the product great cared enough about the packaging to make the packaging great. So, if people are like want to learn how they can broaden their taste, I think this would be one of the ways to do it, right? Is take a look at the things you love and then take a look at what's immediately next to the thing that you love. The box that it came in, the office that it came out of, the brochure that the company uses for their products.
Interesting. That was brilliant.
Sure.
Now, yeah, coming back to the earlier thread was, so I have like a very simple question here, which I was thinking to do a series, but I think, yeah, it's just, let's see how it goes. But is good design, good business, Hrush? And in this, design is not with the function part of it, but encompassing every aspect of design.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is because in the recent article you used at Hard Copy, I think you spoke about serial entrepreneurs giving some attention to design.
Yeah.
So you want to share anything there? Why is it happening, or any trends that you see, or it's obvious, those kind of things?
No, I think it's obviously not as obvious as the three of us might like to think it is. That's why it took a second time for some of the second-time entrepreneurs to pay attention to it. But obviously, it's obvious enough that the second time you go around the carousel, you're paying more attention to it. And I think, for a lot of second-time entrepreneurs, they also have for a lot of them, what they're doing the second time around is probably now what they want to do for a really long time, if not forever. And so the level of care they want to see put into some of these things is significantly greater than for the first time.
But why do you think design will bring that care?
I don't think it's design that brings that care. I think it's that they care more about design this time. because they recognize potentially that this in some ways is going to be what they leave behind.
Like I can't remember where I read it, but it's like the first time you do it to make a living. The second time you do it to make a difference.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, let's take a short break here. Okay, welcome back to the show.
Rush, so you said like, and we were in the glass half full part of the conversation here that, and design, a lot of entrepreneurs are understanding the value that design could bring. But what are some of the gaps where you think that, Indian tech scene specifically needs to invest in design? Because personally, and again, you may disagree with this, personally, I feel like we had back in 2006, 2007, saw a lot of potential, right? But sitting in 2021, looking back, it's like, there aren't a lot of very well designed and designed by our definition, right? Just works that I see in the market. So first part you can answer first, like what are the areas where you think we still need to invest a lot more in?
I think we need to really understand, and this is as much as designers as business builders, right? That I don't think design by itself is necessarily defensible, right? Design paired with multiple other strengths is what creates defensibility. Now, I think what we seem to be really good at in this ecosystem is putting a lot of those other strengths to work and leaving design out. So if I look at, because it's also a question of, again, in this ecosystem, which is one of the most value conscious ecosystems on the planet, $10 is enough to influence a buyer? Is it 100? Is it 500? I'd say at about anywhere over $50, and you're kind of able to exercise influence, right? But if you paired something that is the best designed and the cheapest, which kind of in the software world you should be able to do, because unlike hardware design, we don't have a bill of materials, right? That comes with software. So you should actually be able to sell more and more and more of the same thing and be the cheapest and the best design. I think that, to me, is the winning investment, the winning combination. I don't know if that's what you were getting at, Abhinit.
No, makes sense. So let me dig a little deeper here. One is like, I have few theories, right? Like one is when I look back at that time, I remember the App Store had just come out and people would make a to-do app or something and they had a price to it. That $5, $4.99 and download my app. And then when a client would come and you have to design another to-do app, the competition in terms of simplicity and design was much more direct. If you're going to sell it for $5, it has to be better. But over time, I've seen business models, and you touched upon this, they're getting more and more complicated as well. Right? So do you think, like, is there anything that entrepreneurs should do or have to do to keep their business model simpler? Or do they still have to realize that simpler things would sell better? That's what we designers kind of tend to preach, right? Sorry if it doesn't make sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And a great topic to dive into a little bit. The thing about complex business models is they end up not selling simpler things because they'll give away the simpler thing for free. That's how the business model became complex, right? Apple's business model is super simple. You like what I have? Open your wallet and give me some money and I'll give you some of this. Right? This is the oldest, simplest business model in the world. And then there's Facebook and Google and X and Y, and they don't sell you anything, right? They sell you to someone else. Everything they're giving you, Google's web search, simple, great, works, is free. Gmail is free. WhatsApp is free. So in that world, I don't know how you go about defending the simpler business models, because for as long as there's been a business model, people have been saying you can't compete with free, right?
Yeah.
So having said that, I think that over the next half decade to decade, we will see business models getting simpler again, because there is now a growing awareness. I was probably one of the first people to start like bashing Google for what now is widespread and aware, right? People are aware that Google is basically I'm going to take your stuff and give it away for free. You keep giving me stuff for free, feed my index, and I'll make all the money. That's part of it. The privacy aspects of it are part of it. The opaque pricing, X, Y, Z. And there's a growing awareness of all of this stuff at the regulatory level and at the consumer level, right? So I think over these two forces of growing awareness of consumers actually saying, you know what, I don't want that free shit anymore. Because all that free shit is doing is spying on me, stealing my data, and making money from that. And from a regulatory standpoint, people are realizing that, look, we actually need to do a lot more to defend the privacy of our citizens, to give them rights to their own data, to make sure that they have a say in terms of how their data is going to be used and not used or whatever. So I think those two things are going to keep moving forward. And in lockstep, as they move forward, we will probably see a re-emergence of simpler business models, because now there is a way to compete with free, and it's called private.
I don't know whether this will make sense, but I've been just reading a bit about BAT, and I think that will also democratize how marketing is done, how advertising is shown to people, the basic attention token. I think that will also open up like how we interact with Facebook and Googles of the world.
Sure, yeah. I haven't read that much about it, so
yeah. I've just done I've wished to go through the white paper, but it just over a quick glance.
What a long bet Apple has had on privacy. I remember, and I'm pretty sure both of you are aware as well, back when Apple started putting this front and center in their marketing stuff, people were like, oh, you're crazy. This is not, the next billion users, they don't care about privacy, right? This is not going to work. It was just a decade ago. And I don't think I've rooted as hard for anything as I have for this bet to play off, right? Because today, right, like I see more and more people in India, and I design for Southeast Asia, right? Here also people used to say the same thing. These customers do not care. These customers don't care for privacy. These customers don't value time. So there's no point in making a product fast, right? These customers will never pay for, say, better packaging or better customer service, right? Things like that. But thanks, Hrush. Like you're a glass half full person. Good to hear that you see these things changing. Aim into that. Yeah.
And obviously, there are lots of things to be discussed and asked to Hrush on an ongoing basis. So, but just for this episode, we would like to conclude with one last question, which is, Hrush, if you can just give your observations or your readings about design talent in India, right? I have a plug in the end that even you are hiring, you're looking for people. Any observations? I'm very sure that you haven't really engaged in interviews for many years now, but you must be hearing people are reaching out to you for guidance. And so any observations you have with respect to design talent in the digital or the software design of India?
It's just a very confusing space, and I don't know why we have such a dearth of talent, and I think it's gonna be a couple of generations before we see it change. First of all, I think when I look at 15 years ago, I don't think anyone thought there's such a thing. So no one actually ever wanted to become one of these things. means, right? There was no such thing. And so we've had lack of, as the series itself goes to show, we've had a lack of matured designers, right? Which is really required in order for the next generation and the generation after that to become better designers. And since we don't have those yet, or enough, anywhere near, I mean, this is what are we talking about? We're talking about a handful of people in the country, right? That you'd put into that group of saying, here's someone with 12 plus years experience and top of their game.
Mm.
So who's going to turn them into someone that's better than them, than themselves, right? We just don't have that. So it's going to take a couple of generations before we actually have, and I'm being optimistic and just assuming that this is not a safe assumption by any means, that there will be, even 2 generations down, like a significant number of people in the ecosystem. Why they don't exist is puzzling. I don't know. I'm not sure.
We've talked to a lot of people in this series, Hrush, and
Yeah.
everybody grapples with that question, but the answer is it's anybody's guess. And you mentioned Shreyas as well. And we talked to him as well, and he was also like, he's literally solving a problem in that space, right?
Yeah.
But nobody seems to know why there is this gap in the middle. And it's the same for engineering also, by the way. Right?
Is it? I mean,
Yeah.
like in any given company, no matter what size, I think, let's say you're talking about a post-Series A company and you're looking at what? At least a 15 engineers to 1 designer ratio.
Yeah.
So it can't be that bad, right?
Yeah.
On the engineering front.
Yeah. A theory I've heard is that a lot of this mid-level talent is being sacrificed at the altar of management, right? So you end up making a great craftsperson a manager, and you end up losing a great craftsperson, and you get a terrible manager if they don't.
I don't know
end
these
up.
people. Do you guys know these people?
I know a few.
Yeah. No, man. I don't think that's the problem.
Sure.
Because even if the great craftsperson becomes a manager, he should be able to extract that craft out of the people that now report to him, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah.
No, but yeah, I mean, Rush, like it needs some handholding to people manage, and I think that piece is missing. So, like, I've spoken to few designers. They don't know what does a senior manager or like a L2, L3 kind of thing. In fact, because I've joined a fintech, a lot of designers are reaching out saying, I want to learn finance. I mean, like different problems designers at different levels are having, and a lot of rejections get, yeah, finance, no, I have to work on Excel, I'm not joining. This is what the designers are saying. Right, so it's just, as you correctly put it, it's way too fragmented and no clear definition.
Yeah. I'm very worried, I must say, about the state. Even 2 generations down, even though I'm saying it'll take 2 generations, like it's with great hesitation, and there's a vast amount of doubt as to even 2 generations down, does it happen? Because now not only do we have a vacuum of people that can groom the next generation and the generation after that, but we've also got this like crazy amount of like fragmentation going on, where oh my god, if like all you know how to do is, first of all, I don't even know where some of these boundaries are. Okay, I didn't go to school for design. I studied economics and history. So in teaching myself design, maybe I taught myself too many disciplines. I'm a jack of all and master of none. But I don't know where the lines are in some of this nonsense, right? And the line that seems to me the most well-defined and most well-understood is actually the line that irritates me the most, which is I do UI and that guy does UX.
Yeah.
So apparently UX consists of understanding problems, and UI consists of boxes and arrows. So I think this over-specialized world is going to cause us more headaches and more problems.
Yeah. In fact, I completely resonate, and this two generations is not even like an overstatement, because we have to first deal with the craft and other things, and then with the geographies also, because this UI UX fragmentation you see more in Mumbai as opposed to Bangalore. In Hyderabad is
Yeah,
a different
all of
story.
this junk was
Delhi.
not stuff you heard about in the startup world, right? Like 10, 15 years ago, if you were a designer, you were the damn
Yeah.
designer. You did it all. This was
Yeah.
stuff you heard in SAP and IBM and all of those, like Boston Consulting Group. And those are the guys where you heard, oh, I do this and I do that. Like, no one at, like, anyway, it's
We were,
unfortunate that it's made the jump over into this part of the world, but
we were all web designers. So, Rush, to your point, I think part of this complexity is also thanks to how complex software has become, right?
mm,
And another thing is, Kedar, like more than Mumbai, Bangalore, I see this as a difference between small companies and big companies, right? Like the need for specialization, it comes in because all functions get specialized actually after a company grows to a certain size. I'm still to decide why. But to wrap this up, and I should have brought this up in the previous question, but Rush, there's something you said which reminded me of a screen or a flow in Cleartrip, right? Like I always used to appreciate that when I went to Cleartrip and booked a flight, on the checkout screen, Cleartrip would be very direct with, they would always have a plain text coupon code right above the field, right, where you were entering. And you might get a very tiny discount, but it felt good. Whereas on other travel platforms or other websites, when I used to go, it almost felt like they've intentionally made it difficult. If you have a ICICI card with an Indian Oil partnership, then you will get this and a giant list. And eventually, it was so difficult, apparently, that Coupon Dunia came out, right? Somebody literally made a company which solved for this use case, right? So I don't know if this story makes sense or not, Kedar. We can remove it later. But I think that shows, right? Because that complexity in that screen is definitely making business money, right? That added complexity, which makes it harder for the customer to find the right voucher and apply it, is making
yeah,
money. It's pure numbers.
yeah.
So that stage, I think that the founders have to step in, or somebody has to, and take a call that we will lose this money, but this is better experience, right? So
No, you're absolutely right. We had lots of fights about this kind of stuff all the time. And you're very right about how the coupon game works as well, right?
Yep.
You want it there, you want to make noise about it outside so that you get people to the top of your funnel. And by the time they leave from the bottom of the funnel, you want them to somehow forget that the coupon is what brought them in.
Yep.
Yeah, quite honestly, I think there's a tension between short-term thinking and long-term thinking. And I think in matters like this, at Cleartrip, we always chose to use the long-term view, right? So actually, if it had been entirely up to me, it would have been even simpler than what you saw, right?
Sure.
Which is that I just apply the coupon for you.
Yep.
And I still think that long term, if you want to take a really long term view of things, like I'm talking about, and there's very few people that can really do this, right? I'm not even sure if I can. But this is the taking a Bezos level long term view, right? Where the man always said to any investor that came and had a conversation with him, he said, my investors' interests and my customers' interests are long-term aligned. There is no conflict between these two. But somehow you don't see that clarity of thinking a lot.
Sure.
Yeah. And I remember one more thing which Hrush only had introduced me to, the Dieter Ram's website, the Vitsu website. So you go there and you order stuff, and at the checkout page, it's a very straightforward line that don't buy right now if you're not sure. I mean, it takes real balls to write like that. At the checkout page, you don't buy right now. We are here. You can come back later and buy. I mean, I was just stunned by that, which is very, very opposite to what we do, right? 5 minute, last minute, 2 minute discount, fatafat. So yeah, it's interesting. Cool. I think we'll wrap up this episode. Thanks, Hrush, for giving your time. It was like really,
Thank you, guys. It's been fun.
yeah, fun talking to you. And thank you, Abhinit, for being co-host on this series and being part of like such amazing conversations I had with everyone. And yeah, thanks for being there.
Welcome, Kedar. I had just as much fun, if not more, than you did.
Cool. For listeners, thanks for listening till the end. Currently, I'm heading the design at Jupiter.money and we are hiring at all levels. Visit jupiter.money/careers. You can follow Audiogyan on Instagram at Audiogyan Moments or visit audiogyan.com for more GAN sessions. You guys want to plug? I think, Hrush, you're looking for researchers and designers, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, just designers, actually.
Okay. You don't want to fragment.
Yeah.
Good. Abhinit?
I do hire from time to time. It's been slow this year, but if you want to know about any openings from Gojek Design, follow us at Gojek Design on Twitter and we'll post updates there.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
And that's it from today's GAN session. For show notes and more GAN, visit audiogyan.com. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to check our other interesting podcast on IVM Network. You can listen to us on IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. To stay tuned, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IVM Podcast. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round is on Me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunya One, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigrities. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them, and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week. Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks guys, without you this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.